Just keep your knees bent so that your feet are flat. Make sure that your head's supported with enough behind it so that you can feel the neck muscles relax. So just try and consciously slide the back of your head up the support to lengthen the back of your neck. And as you take a couple of breaths, try and let the tension from the front of your neck go. So you've got that gentle tuck back on your chin, keeping the back of the neck long and these neck muscles at the front soft. And we'll just focus on that for a moment as you wriggle your shoulders and check you can feel your shoulder blades behind your upper back. Open them, just let any sort of tightness that tends to round them forward, try and let that go. Your arms, we'll start with them alongside, just while we settle the lower body in to a good position, and then we're going to raise the arms up. Okay, so aim for neutral spine, feet a comfortable distance apart. And then when you're ready, out breath your arms to float up so the fingertips are pointing to the ceiling. And all we're going to do to start with is just work on reaching those fingertips really high towards the ceiling. So you feel your shoulder blades separating and wrapping around the outside of your rib cage, and then draw them towards each other. So the shoulder blades are drawing towards each other, wrapping towards the center, and your fingertips are coming down lower without bending the elbows though. So reach high again, fingertips to the ceiling, and then draw them back down again. So we're just working on feeling those shoulder blades wrapping around the rib cage and then coming back towards the midline. A couple more times, keeping the lower body soft, just a slight engagement in your pelvic floor, no other conscious tension or effort. One more big reach with the fingertips, and then draw them back down, shoulder blades nice and close to the spine, and lower your arms back to the mat. Good. Taking the attention a little bit lower, settle your ribs back to the mat. Think about their connection at the front here. And we'll do some pelvic tilting. So just rocking back, contacting your lower back into the mat. So just about the tailbone curling up off the mat, and then rock forward again. So we're not coming into a full bridge yet. We're just going to work here below the waistline. Just tipping back, contacting with the mat, the low back, closing that space down, and then tipping forward. There are a couple of ways of sort of visualizing this. You can think of the pelvis as a bucket, tipping water out the back, tipping water out the front. Or you can think about a marble that you're trying to roll into your belly button and then tip it back out so it rolls back down as if going between your legs. And really explore that movement. Try not to push too hard through the mat. Use this muscle in your center, this called a group of muscles in your center, rather than pushing hard on your heels or pushing through your hands. And then when you're ready, just slip the head support away so that we can progress this up into a shoulder bridge. Heels come a bit closer to your bottom. Next time you tip your low back into the mat and it's contacted, peel your tailbone up and away and start working each vertebrae up from the mat. A bit of pressure through the heels, but lots of activity through the glutes. Stretch the front of those thighs while you breathe in. And then out breath yourself back to the mat, level by level. All right, so our first few shoulder bridges are really just an extension of the pelvic tilt. We bring it from there all the way up, focusing on spinal movement, that segmental movement through the spine. Working through any stiffer areas. Starting to think about the glutes really firing up and working so that when we're ready, we can start bringing it into that one leg version. And your breath in at the top when you take it, think about the outward swing of the ribs. As you take your deeper breath now, at the top here, open the ribs out to the sides. Lovely. And then we'll take it to one of our progressions. So your choice, but if you feel ready, and you can keep the hips up there and level, you can take it into the one leg version. Straightening at the knee, come back down. All right, don't work through any straining in your back or overwork of the hamstrings. If that's happening, then just work on a different version whereby you maybe just lift the heel up on alternate feet, or you can do the dipping version where you're switching off and switching on alternate sides to get that sideways tip of the pelvis. And like I said, if you are ready and you want to, alternate knee extensions here. Keep that pelvis level, don't overwork your low back, focusing on the glutes. Keep the arms light. Come down between reps if you need to. Let's keep going for a couple more. Good, one more to each side. And then, when you're ready, all the way back down to the mat. Then bring your feet back to a comfortable hip width distance. Bring your head support back in. Lovely. And we'll take it to our hip twists. So try and make sure you come back to neutral spine. Make sure your belly button and your pubic bone are level with each other. And we'll start with level one hip twist, just allowing one knee to drop out to the side. In, breath back. So this is where we're starting to look for that stronger engagement in the lower abdominals, keeping the pelvis level across the front, allowing the hip to really open out with as much free movement as you can control. If you want to progress it, there's that hover of the arms that you can bring in. Feel how that challenges you more to control your body position. Out, breath out. In, breath back. And if you want to, take it up to your tabletop version, maintaining neutral, flat low tummy, and work here. So this is like our book opening. With one knee pointing straight up towards the ceiling, like you could balance a glass of wine on that knee. Still aiming for really lovely free movement from the hip that's opening up. Light arms, soft upper body. Keep going if you can, bring the heels back to the mat if you want to go back to that level one. Good, last couple. And when you bring the feet back down, one at a time. Bring your feet back down and put that heels and ankles and feet together. So they're next to each other, the knees are together, thighs together as well. We'll bring the arms out to shoulder height. We'll carry on with our hip twists, but for some mobility here, level two. Breath in. And then out, breath the knees over to one side. So the ankles stay together, one foot's hopped on top of the other. The knees stay together, but the shoulders stay on the mat. Breathe in. Out breath back. Good. So your option here is if you want to move on every element of the breath, you can. So you'd be working at twice the speed. And if that feels better, if that feels more beneficial to you, then do that. If you want to take your time and breathe in to deepen the stretch, it gives you your out breath to lift the knees back up again. That lovely strength the out breath gives you. We're looking towards the opposite hand for the full twist. One more. Good. And rest. Bring your arms back down, your feet back to hip width. Check in with neutral. I'm going to carry on here in rest position for a couple more. Starting with our one leg stretch. So let's just out breath it here away. In breath back. So simply opening up the front of the hip, opening up the knee, stretching the front of the body, but with control over that low back position. So focus on the space behind your low back not changing. In breath back. Hover the arms if you want to, challenge yourself by just reducing that support from the mat. Good. And then when you're ready, we'll take it to level 2. That's floating up. Pause to breathe in, push away, and back, and down. So if you want to skip this level altogether, you can. You can work from tabletop, just pushing away alternate legs. But we're going to come to scissors from tabletop in a minute. So this is your opportunity to work here at that mid progression level with the nice one leg tabletop, pushing away, good, controlling. Using the out breath for the more challenging elements. One more to each side here. Keep that low tummy lovely and flat, don't let it pop. Good. All right, we will finish on our backs with the last exercise. If you're still in tabletop, you can stay there or come up into tabletop for scissors. So this is our start position. Checking the ribs are connected, the low tummy is flat, space behind your low back, and then start out breathing down with one foot to tap, in breath back. Really make sure that the movement happens from the hip joint. Try not to bend that knee. It should be staying at 90 degrees. Good. Try and keep the upper body soft. Keep your breathing steady, not strained. Last couple. One to each side now. And then just bring your knees in and give them a hug before we change position. So big stretch for your low back. Curve it right off if your back's okay with that. Okay, we'll bring it onto our sides. So if you can align your shoulders and hips and heels, starting with climb at level 2, just make sure the top hip's forward, not rolled back at all. So we'll lift the ankles up for level 2 or leave them down if you'd rather. Breath in and then out, breath up with that knee. Let's really try and focus in on the glute med. So give it a little bit of a wake up pat if it needs it, right into your back pocket area. Wake the muscle up. Try and make sure as you get to the top and you're pressing your heels into each other, that last squeeze of movement comes from behind the hip there. Good. And make sure the shoulder doesn't join in. Keep it away from your ear, not creeping up. Nice and open. Shoulder blade tucking back into your pocket. You can carry on there, or if you want to make a change to it, you could add the knee extension. Or I'll give you a reminder of level 3 if you'd rather do that. So there are some options for you to keep going with. If you're extending the knee, then keep the knee high, keep the hip open while you straighten it out. Okay, but if you're wanting to work on level 3, here it is. Just bend the top knee, the lower leg is out straight. That's the only difference. Having that lower leg straight, giving you a really narrow base of support. So you work really hard on your control while you work the hip in the same way. You can, if you're feeling brave, add to it the knee extension as well. But we've all had a couple of weeks off, I think, so work where's right. And that's it. Last couple, whichever version you're doing, make these the last couple. And then rest down. Good. And we'll stay with the hip. We'll do some lift and lowers or leg lifts. So I don't want to neglect leg lifts because they are good for isolating the inner thigh strength, which also contributes to your pelvic stability. But for people who have a sensitivity in their low back and pelvis at the back there, these sometimes are aggravating. So your choice. I'll give you both options. So your lift and lower is here with just the top leg going up to its end of range and back down. So that we out breath it up, the toes are pointing. In breath it down, ankle flexing. I need to move up a bit. And the end of range is as much as your hip can do, just before you tip over into your waist space. Making sure that there's no pelvic tip over. But if you want to work on some leg lifts, only bring the leg up to hip height here, and then join with the lower leg. Hold, and then lower both legs. All right, so it's quite different, because the top leg only comes up in line with the upper body, and then you join with the lower leg to bring that inner thigh strength in. And as you lower them, you treat them as one. You hold and then lower. So keep going with whichever is your chosen version. Hold for a couple more. Making this one your last. And then rest. Okay, let your knees bend now. And if you want to, because we're going to do arm openings, if you want to add weight, you can into your top arm, but swing your arms around to the front. Support your head with that larger cushion if you've got one. Make sure that the hips are still aligned so they're completely stacked, top hip pointing straight up to the ceiling. And we'll make a start on the out breath. Open on up. Try and drop those back ribs towards the mat behind you, centre of the chest towards the ceiling while you breathe in. And out breath back over. All right, so we're working that twist further up the spine than we were with the hip twist that we did earlier. We're really looking for upper body rotation now. Rotating the upper body relative to the lower body, where we were doing the opposite and rotating the lower body, keeping the upper body still. Wonderful. Keep going in your own time with your breath rate. Just one more. Look after that shoulder. Focus on it being your chest. And up of that moving. And then coming back. Good. And have a push up into sitting. All right, and again, we'll stay with the upper back. So we'll carry on with spine twists. If you want to, you could bring it more towards a saw where you have your legs out straight, if you prefer to bring in those hamstring and inner thigh stretches. But if that's a challenge and you just want to focus on up back, bring the legs to cross. If your legs are out straight, you could just sit on your cushion and it will help give you a little extra hamstring length. We'll keep the arms low. Keep the centre engaged, the crown of the head growing really tall while you breathe in. And then out breath around. Breathing in the stretch. And then back. Good, so again, just trying to keep the lower body still moving, the upper body relative to it. We're really thinking about lengthening at the same time though, so growing taller as you spiral. Bring up, higher, crown of the head to the ceiling. Good. And then bring the fingertips up to the temples if you can, as long as you can keep the shoulders dropped down, the elbows high and wide. And we'll carry on for a couple more. One more to each side. Lovely. Back to the centre. And we'll stay here in sitting for some mermaids. You can leave your legs crossed. If you prefer, you can kneel. But the full mermaid in sitting would be to bring the legs to wrap around. So one heel's in towards the groin and the other one wraps behind you. See whether you can still get yourself sitting down through your sitting bones like that. If that doesn't work, then go back to the cross-leg position. And we'll start with the hands to the side, shoulders open away from your ears, really tall, centre engaged. Breathe in And out to the side, breathe in the stretch. And out, come on. And keep the legs where they are to do the other side. So as you come over, you can rest on that hand that's still touching the mat, but try not to lean on it. Try and get more control from here. And switch the legs around. So if you have them crossed, just see if they'll cross the other way. You probably have a favourite way. So try the other. Good. Breath in. And out. Breathe in and really open up here. The other side. Trying to keep the weight down through both sitting bones. Like you can. All right, as we bring it back down onto our other side, we'll start with arm openings, just to keep the work in the upper body. When you're positioned, when you feel ready, just make a start. Check that your shoulders are stacked and they're away from your ears. The hips are stacked, not rolling back. Shoulders, hips and heels in a line. Lovely, keep those knees down. Keep the top hip forward. And it will help you really isolate the movement in your upper back. All the way back. Good. And when you finish with this one, just change your arm position to carry on working on this side, working on the hips. Clam first. So ankles up, heels together, out breath. And in. Try and make sure you keep those shoulders nice and away from your ears. Nice and open through the front. Engaged here in your centre. Trying to sort of consciously hold that lower tummy back towards your spine and stay long through both sides of the waist. If you're adding to this, you can add the knee extension. All the time keeping the hip open so that that glute stays engaged while you straighten the leg out. That's it. Quick reminder, level 3 for anyone who's doing it. Good, last couple. Whichever you're doing, squeeze just a little bit more from this. Finish with this last one. And then rest. You've still got one more exercise on this side for this hip. Your choice, lift and lower or leg lifts, but make sure you're in a line first that you can just see your toes when you look down your body. That top hip is rolling slightly forward towards the mat in front of you. And then we'll go with lift and lower. Good. You can do a few of those and then change, or if you want to change whenever you're ready, it's just to hip height, join with the lower leg, lower both. Don't persevere if it's straining in your groin. That could be a strain point, or in the back, in your very low back and the SIJs, your sacroiliac joints. Don't persevere through that. This is your other option. Just coming as high as the hip joint allows. And if you really do isolate that hip joint movements, you keep the hip forward, you keep the leg back in line with your body, you'll get really good glute work. So keep going for a couple more. Making this next one your last. And then rest. Okay. Coming over onto your tummy. Let's stick with the glutes. So that as we do swimming, we'll start with the legs, which means that you can rest your head on your hands to start with, if that's comfortable. Take a moment aligning yourself, lengthening the crown of the head and the tailbone into opposite directions, towards opposite walls. The legs are in at hip width apart, no wider. Have a breath in. And then out breath, one straight leg up off the mat. In breath back down. So trying to keep the knees straight, but most importantly, keep the low back long, as if you're tucking your tailbone between your legs. And you don't dip or arch into this low back. If you have that tendency, you can put your small head support underneath your tummy, just to stop you overarching your low back while you get used to it. We're going for a couple more. Good. And then we're going to bring the head support in so we can bring arms in. So your forehead's resting. Take your arms overhead. If you want to, you can use your weights in your hands. That's up to you. But draw your shoulder tops away from your ears. Keep your low back long. Have another breath in. And then out breath the arm and the opposite leg to hover. And then lower. We're trying to keep that knee straight. Trying to lift from the hip so that 5 hovers. Your forehead stays resting, with the back of the neck nice and long. The shoulders, tops, nice and lengthened away from your ears, so your shoulder blades are working down into your pockets. Feel the work into your glutes and around the shoulder blade area of your shoulder. You're diagonally across your back. Last couple. And then rest. Good. And we're going to stay with the upper body. Keep the weights in your hands if you're using them, but bring them down alongside by your hips. And just let your shoulders drop forward to start with. Reposition your leg up if you need to, just lengthen it again, tuck your tailbone between your legs, engage your pelvic floor, and we'll work from here. Out breath, but fronts of the shoulders open and hover those arms up for a breath in. And then lower. You move on the out breath, opening the fronts of the shoulders, hovering the arms, reaching the fingertips towards the heels while you breathe in. And then lower. And this is level 1, so if you want to add to it, you can add that forehead hover. Breathe in here. And then lower. Getting that lift by extending your upper back. Keep the tailbone gently tucked. Keep the crown of the head pointing straight forward. Don't lift from the neck. Keep that long at the back. And keep going for a couple more. Level 1 or 2. Whatever's working for you. And then rest. Good. And we'll have a push back from there, all the way back, to give your back a stretch into child's pose. Give your upper back a stretch as well by lowering the centre of your chest down between your knees. Lovely. And we'll do some cat and carry from a 4-point kneel. We've done quite a lot of rotation, so let's stick to our cat and cow in this position, and then we'll come up and finish with some work on our feet. So draw your shoulder tops away from your ears again, lengthen the back of your neck so you look straight down between your hands. Neutral spine to start, have your breath in. And then out breath, tip forward through that pelvis. You can start looking forward, breathing in the stretch. You really lengthen and relax your tummy there. And then move in the opposite direction. Breathe in. So start alternating, moving on your out breath, breathing in to stretch. Moving on your out breath. Good, and then coming back to neutral. Okay, we'll tuck the toes under, bring it back so that we can do a couple of roll-ups. So from your crouched position, you can just lift your bottom up, work a little bit into the backs of the legs in that forward fold, alternating sides, working into any tightness and tension. And then just hang heavy. Take a breath in. And then out breath to start rebuilding. Rolling back up again. So from standing, do a couple more full roll downs. If you want to add to it, you can. You've got that option of crossing one leg over the other, which challenges your balance and also gives you a different stretch, especially neurally. So go easy with it. Don't force it. Because if you do have a go to one side, make sure you try the other side as well. Rebuilding on the out breath. Working your way back up through the spine. The head's the last thing to float. Lovely. And in standing, we'll do some balance. Little bit of balance work. Let's just start with the feet hip width apart. Growing really tall. Transfer the weight onto one foot. Try and keep the knee soft on the standing leg. You'll feel the glutes fire up to take all that weight and bring the other one to clear the mat to start with, and then see if you can start floating the knee up towards hip height. So you're bending or hinging at the hip. And then lower down to touch. So try and keep lovely and upright, open through the shoulders, long through the back of the neck. Put as much tension here in between those pelvic bones at the front as you can, and try not to grip your standing toes into the mat. Lovely. One last one. That's it. We'll take it to the other side, but this time, if you can and you want to, open up into the front of the chest as well. So you know how we do chest stretch sometimes from this shoulder height position, opening the front of the chest and elevating the center of the chest towards the ceiling. Just see if you can add that in when you do the other side. So again, transfer the weight, strong glutes, soft knee, clear this foot, bring the arms up to shoulder height. And as you float up with the knee, open up. That's another element of a challenge, as well as getting that nice stretch in your upper back and chest. Last couple. Okay, a few little steps here, and we'll do some climbing standing to finish. That's another balance challenge, but we'll try and get the glute working, not just the standing one this time, the opening hip as well. So if you transfer your weight, float up just so that you can hook this foot behind your other calf muscle. If you can't, just rest it on the mat, but see if you can. And then we'll keep the hip bones pointing straight ahead like headlights and open the knee out to the side. Squeezing into that back of hip and then come back to center. Try and match your breathing. Out breath out. In breath back in. Again, try not to grip with your toes if you can, keep them soft, keep the tension here, shoulders open, nice long back of your neck. Well done. And we'll make the last set, the other leg. Strong, soft, just hook there for your pivot point, and we'll open up. Do the last couple. Good, and you're all done. Well done.